Hope you had a wonderful lunch. Welcome back. We're going to kick off this afternoon with a Keynote Fireside chat. We've talked about cloud earlier, cloud native earlier, so let's talk about the journey to cloud native with an expert who certainly understands that in great detail. The moderator for this session is going to be Aaron Boasman-Patel, who is the Vice President of AI from the TM Forum. Aaron?
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We're hopefully going to keep you all energized after lunch and get everybody really talking about what does that journey to cloud native look like. I'm delighted to be joined by Vivek, Chadha, who's the SVP of Global Head of Telco Cloud from Rakuten Symphony. Welcome. Round of applause. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
Well, Vivek, so, we've heard a lot this morning. We've talked a little bit about edge, in the session before this, but that is all really empowered by the cloud. And as we start to think about what the future of our networks are going to look like. But when we talk to people, I think there's still a lot of confusion between cloud, cloud native, cloud enabled, prem, off-prem, what all these different things mean. So why don't we start off talking about what do we really understand or what do we mean by truly cloud native networks?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and my personal opinion is it's perhaps, in retrospect, a slightly unfortunate choice of term, cloud native, because it immediately suggests something to people who aren't that intimate with the topic. There's a sense of familiarity, but the reality is starkly different. There's lots of people in the room who I think are already quite advanced or progressed in that journey, but in simplest terms, cloud is somebody else's computer, which you lease, and you run your workload on it. And in certain cases, you get a level of service and managed service, etc., either at the infrastructure level and in advanced cases at the application stack level. So that's cloud, public cloud, so AWS, GCP, etc., in the simplest terms, in the vanilla terms. Cloud native is an architecture paradigm enabled by an actual stack of technologies which has matured over the years, which actually allows you to design and build applications with cloud native principles in mind. And the big difference is cloud native took all the learnings from the last decade and a half of what cloud providers were able to offer. So elasticity, scalability, pay-as-you-go models, flexibility, time to market. And they thought, how can we extend all of this in a way that allows businesses, whether it's telcos or enterprises, to bring this capability either on an on-prem environment, so on your own bare metal, or across the street to a data center, or in a hybrid environment where you choose to run some of it on-prem, some of it on public cloud. And they took it a bit further, and then they said, day zero, cloud stuff is easy. You can launch applications, you can move them, etc. When you start to scale applications and you get into the world of distribution, microservices-based architecture, etc., how do you keep day one and day two operations flexible and scalable as well? And they built some of that into the platform as well. So the fundamental difference is cloud native allows you to bring in all the power of the public cloud from an infrastructure perspective, but extend it to lifecycle management. And I think the biggest difference from the technology and operational standpoint is a significant burden of responsibility for assurance, performance, reliability, replication, self-healing moves to the actual platform that provides your container orchestration. Your applications don't have to design everything from scratch anymore, which was never the case in cloud. So I think, in a nutshell, that's one key differentiator.
And Vivek, where do you really see us on this journey? Because the earliest days of cloud has been lift and shift. We've seen a lot of operators, take their stuff from either on-prem, their stacks, just move it into the cloud. But that's not really what being cloud native is all about. So where do you think we are in that journey? Do you think we've got a long way still to go?
I think the shift has already started, and one leading indicator is if you look at most of the public cloud providers or hyperscalers, they all offer some variant or the other of cloud native or Kubernetes. So that's one indicator. regardless of what industry you are in, if you are a technology leader in your respective business, look at where your vendor ecosystem is headed. A lot of them are now moving from, in the networks world, from VNFs to CNFs. So that's another indicator. So I think that shift has started, and it's actually imminent that businesses would start revisiting the balance of control between what they can do on their own now, because the technologies have evolved and matured over the last decade, versus the stuff that they didn't really have an option on, let's say 15 years ago, where they wanted the flexibility, etc. So I think it has already progressed, and like any other evolutionary technology, there's the leaders and then there's the early adopters, and some businesses will wait to understand if the operating models and other tool sets, etc., are resolved before they follow. But I think it's well on its way.
And when we think about the future of telco, there's a thing that we call the future techco, which is all about becoming technology companies. Telco's really evolving. And the key to that, though, is innovating, and innovating with technology and understanding what that brings. How important is cloud native for being innovative? How does it enable new innovation?
If I had to, and arguably I'm biased, because obviously Rakuten Symphony SIM Cloud platform is one of the most advanced CNP platforms in the world. I would say if you look at the technical debt you have probably built up for all the good reasons in doing assurance, performance, replication, resilience, because you did not have an alternative. When you went to the standard cloud paradigms that were available, and this happened after virtualization. First you virtualized the on-prem infrastructure, and then you started adopting the centralized cloud capabilities. If you now step back and look at what's likely to happen in your organization in the next 5 years, you'll probably come to the realization that a significant amount of that technical debt that you've inherited is now provided by the underlying cloud orchestration platform. Why wouldn't you exploit it? Because it's proven to work at scale. There is a massive amount of community support behind it. There is a very strong commercial reason why all the major public cloud providers are adopting it as well. So I think the most significant benefit that I believe telcos will achieve when moving to cloud native is that, for lack of a better word, all the infrastructure and process plumbing you had to build or your teams had to build, the majority of that, the burden of responsibility now shifts to the underlying platform, and that platform will enable it for your applications. So you can actually focus the intellect of your teams on what is core for your business logic, rather than have them do the same thing over and over again across every application or network function.
And we talk about innovation, we talk about moving much more towards open source, we think about the role of 5G. But really, how much flexibility does going cloud native really give? Because we are starting to see more and more vendor lock-in as we start to progress in those areas of 5G standalone.
Excellent question. So this choice between vendor lock-in and ecosystem lock-in. And unless you're an organization that is constantly going to analyze on a monthly or a quarterly basis your choices, you're going to have to commit to one way or the other. There is a hybrid way, and which is where I think cloud native allows you that flexibility, which is if you redraw the balance of probability between what you have traditionally used cloud for, public cloud, and you investigate, especially in the telco world, if you investigate whether it's 5G on its own or it's the O-RAN flavor of 5G, what cloud native has already proven in production in the world, there is no doubt in my mind that where you're going to end up on the innovation cycle is leveraging all the capabilities that cloud native provides in terms of microservices, being able to interoperate with a standards-based availability of network functions, and do them at a time to market that's just not possible without cloud native. One example that I want to raise is there's already a lot of lack of clarity. I think you started the conversation by saying there's a cloud native, cloud enabled. People genuinely believe that it's very expensive to move from an existing estate of network functions or existing VM technologies to cloud native because you have to refactor. the famous 6 hours or 7 hours or 9 hours from cloud. I don't know how many hours we've ended up with now, but most of them, I think, were very articulate when they explained you can retire, replace, refactor monolithic applications to move them to the public cloud. When it comes to cloud native, for example, Rakuten Symphony SimCloud has solved the problem by saying you actually take your VNF as is without changing code, put a wrapper around it, and you drop it on our CNP platform. And that same VNF, without changing code, runs in coexistence with any other CNFs you might have on the same common platform. Now, from an innovation perspective, if you are an exec who's trying to create headspace in your business plan to say, how do I create a roadmap? How do I accelerate this journey? And yes, I do want to retire or replace my non-cloud native functions to cloud native, but perhaps not all at once. You started by saying lift, shift, and then transform, or transform, lift, and shift. Or you can just lift and shift to start with, and you can transform at your own pace later. And there are platforms like what we provide that enable that, and this was just impossible a couple of years ago. You couldn't do it. If you did want to do it, you would have to have, again, going back to either an SI ecosystem or your own engineering workforce and inherit, again, considerable technical debt. So this is one very obvious, simple, but subtle example of why cloud native can actually accelerate that innovation.
But I think, though, there are undoubtedly some challenges with migrating, and we have to start to think, how do we operate in a hybrid, environment where we've got all this legacy that you just talked about? So which bit do you start to migrate first? How do you address those migration challenges?
I think with any transformation, you first have to have a clear internal dialogue with the business on why you want to do this transformation. And there's a lot of buzzwords in the industry, et cetera. And I think one of the fundamental necessities to do that is to invest in a true understanding within your organization of what cloud native actually can mean for your business and whether it's right for you. And again, I'm biased, but if organizations truly explore that path, I have no doubt the majority will come to realize that this shift has started happening and they have to align for all the reasons I said, not just internal. Your vendor ecosystem is moving there, your public cloud providers are moving there. I think the first thing that you would need to do is understand what is the low-hanging fruit which could either be re-platformed, for lack of a better word, it's one of the famous 6 Rs, if I remember them correctly, onto a cloud-native platform. And this is where the choice of your technology platform also becomes important. Some of them allow you to do it seamlessly, like the Rakuten SimCloud platform. Some of them will require to undergo the traditional process of using an SI or refactoring the application. But the crux is, regardless of which path you take, you find early use cases which are business critical, but more amenable to a re-platforming early, and then you use that to test what impact that change has on your operating model and the skill set that you have in the organization. Because this is not just a technology change. If you have significant investments in cloud technologies in general, it is not a direct transferable skill to cloud native. Let's accept that. It's a slightly different space and a domain. It's a very opinionated architecture. You can pretty much take any application and host it onto a public cloud. If you want to do cloud native, you have to accept the fact it's an opinionated architecture. In fact, it's that discipline that cloud native forces developers and vendors to provide that ensures consistency, portability, and build once, run anywhere. So coming back to your question, if I have to summarize, I would say you have to have an analysis of your estate, both in terms of existing functions and where you want to go in terms of procuring new functions, and find some early use cases where you can re-platform them and then test the impact of that on your operational processes.
But I think that's always very interesting when you think about those early use cases. I mean, what are those early use cases for you? Because I think one of the biggest challenges are, where is the biggest bang for the buck? What is going to be return the highest ROI? And I see a lot of areas around service assurance becoming one of the first areas where people think this is where we can start to go cloud native.
So I think if I take 5G as an example, just the disaggregated nature of where 5G is headed, you're going to have a technology estate that is multiples more in terms of deployment of footprint, in terms of x86, et cetera. that if you try to build massively scalable applications which self-heal, are resilient, are performant, it's going to be a lot more challenging and cost prohibitive to do it in a non-cloud native manner. Yes, you can do it. People have done it. And you have done it because that's what the previous generation of technologies allowed. Secondly, I think the accelerator that you get in terms of business innovation using cloud native as an ecosystem, and when I say ecosystem, it's not just you, it's startups who might want to be able to offer you services today. If you are enabling a cloud native interface for your business, you are then unlocking the opportunities for these new providers of innovation to come and reach out to your business and say, can we play together and see if there is value for you? It's very hard to do in a monolithic architecture. So those are two examples where I think this is definitely an enabler and headed.
And when we think about this journey towards becoming cloud native, there's a part of that that I'm very, very passionate about, and that's the role of intelligence and AI. How do you think, AI and intelligence, plus cloud native is going to be really powerful for the industry? Do you think the two are married well together?
I think there's still a lot of work to be done, honestly. I also think AI is, if not one of the most abused terms in the industry right now. A lot of what is labeled as AI is nothing but extrapolation and simple heuristics. True AI has demonstrated its capabilities, for example, in the areas of computer vision, etc. So those use cases are very powerful and they work very well. Outside of 5G, one of the areas where we are seeing significant value and pull actually for cloud native deployments is on the edge. Again, when you look at platform providers who've built their cloud native platform from a clean slate, it's not a bolt-on. It was designed from the get-go for cloud native. The performance characteristics are undeniable. So for example, our platform can run VMs 30% more efficiently than just on their own hypervisors. From a CapEx standpoint, that's an amazing win. But coming back to AI and the role of AI, I think two significant areas from an telecoms perspective. I think one is going to be in terms of self-healing and service assurance. And there's some interesting work being done by companies where you are now able to actually go, and I think the market will head there. You can go buy a model rather than a software. And this is part of the vision that we have, and those of you who've heard Tariq Amin, our CEO, speak about this, is Symworld is going to enable this app store interface for the telco industry. And I think personally, this could be one of the ways that operators could go and say, well, I like this model and I want to try it out in my estate. And because everything is cloud native, it's literally plug and play. You take a CNF, drop it, test it, and if it works, you go ahead on the commercial sort of construct on it. So I think service assurance is one such area. I think the other area, which is a little bit more perhaps business and strategy related, is customer insights and analytics. There is an explosion of data being created at the edge. I think most of us have smartphones in our pockets which are doing close to a teraflop, and I don't know how many megapixels. Especially those of us who like taking photographs, doesn't matter of what. This is all getting generated at the edge. And most smartphones today are able to do a lot of cataloging, facial recognition, etc. And that's not happening up in the cloud. It's happening on your device. So that is the edge. And if you extend this argument to an example of, let's say, a high-capacity airport, and maybe Changi already has that. I've been in the country after many years. If you start doing facial recognition at the airport, you want a decision on green or red then and there. You don't want to have that data transit back to a data center thousands of kilometers away, do processing, and send back the result because you have such a flow of traffic going in. So that's another example of why a lot of these AI, ML embedded use cases on the edge will start demanding a cloud native kind of infrastructure because it enables all the capacity, the performance, the self-replication, and the scale advantages which your developers don't have to now build. they can lean on the underlying platform to provide the majority of these enabling capabilities.
And Vivek, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of this session, but if I was to sit here with you in a year's time, how far do you think this conversation would have moved forward? What's next? And do you think we're really at a precipice now where we're starting to drive change?
I think next year we probably and hopefully will be having a conversation about what are some of the biggest deployments across the industries, not just telcos. So we've got Rakuten Mobile. Those of you who are familiar, Rakuten Mobile in Japan is the 4th operator in Japan. The entire network, core, far edge, then the near edge, including the RAN, runs on the Rakuten SIM cloud platform, which used to be a company called Robin.io and got acquired by Rakuten. There's another operator coming out in Germany who has essentially the same architecture. These telco operators are currently serving millions of subscribers. But this is just the telco industry. I think in a year, I will personally be very gratified if we don't just have more of such examples, but we are also able to look at non-telco examples where CloudNative is going at scale. We have some early examples within our estate with banks, etc. But I think the scale is what I'm really excited and looking forward to next year.
So looking forward to scale. Well, Vivek Chadha, SVP, Global Head of Telco Cloud, Rakuten Symphony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Aaron.